Stories of Faith in Action. That's the title of the publication the ELCA circulates to highlight the many and varied ministries that we support with our offerings. And it's not just a catchy PR slogan. These are vital stories to tell. Ours is a denomination of 4 million disciples, one of the largest Christian bodies in the United States. Together, we contribute to the work of God's reign across the country and around the world in ways no individual congregation could dream of. So the story of our faith as a denomination comes to expression in countless acts of loving service to neighbors near and far. Pastor Monica Villarreal, a seminary classmate of mine, tells the story of a ministry we support in her congregation in Flint, Michigan. In our 5th year of congregational renewal, Salem Lutheran Church ministers to a transient neighborhood where more than 42% of residents live in poverty and most live in rental homes. People come and go. It's normal. There are no grocery stores in our community, but plenty of liquor stores that sell expensive and often outdated foods. The city of Flint has not recovered from the economic exodus of the automotive industry decades ago, and our tax base cannot cover the most basic public services that most Americans expect from government. Now with the Flint water crisis, which started in April 2014 with an emergency declared in January 2016, pregnant and breastfeeding women and children under the age of 6 are still instructed to use only bottled water. All residents must filter their water. Today, our mission is as deep as Jacob's well. With the prayers and financial support of ELCA congregations, we are living water for the people of Flint. We distribute nearly 120,000 pounds of water weekly and offer multiple nutrition programs. Salem Lutheran is making a difference in the lives of the city's most vulnerable citizens. Every day we strive for justice, give hope to the hopeless, and comfort the afflicted. Stories of faith in action. Of course, the ELCA is only one expression of the church throughout the ages, a church that has always had stories of faith to tell. By the call of a mysterious rabbi, the first disciples dropped everything to follow in his footsteps. He brought them face to face with the poor and the sick, with sinners and tax collectors, outcasts who found belonging in his company. He led them all the way to the cross, where all their assumptions about power and glory were overturned. Finally, he met them outside an empty tomb and in the upper room and beside the sea, bringing their hope back to life and anointing them to bear God's life-giving love to the world. This first story survived the centuries and inspired another enduring story of faith. Martin Luther, an unknown monk living and teaching in a far corner of the Holy Roman Empire, thrust himself into the center of 16th century history by his fearless proclamation of God's grace in defiance of the Christian establishment. Luther and the Reformers objected especially to the sale of indulgences, or promises of salvation printed on paper, insisting that salvation rested in God's hands alone and could be grasped only through faith. So the church's effort to line its pockets at the expense of common people was both theologically and morally bankrupt. And for their stand, the Reformers were excommunicated from the church and condemned as outlaws. But their story of faith lives on. And we honor it again today with our own gospel proclamations in word and song and service. Stories of Christian faith are broad and sweeping, but they're also profoundly personal. Jesus seeks out and saves not only the lost in general, but also individuals in particular. Of course, Zacchaeus is a prime example. He's easy to overlook, small in stature and spurned by his community on account of his unsavory business practices. Yet Jesus picks him out of a crowd and invites himself over to dinner. Can you imagine? I'm coming to your house. Zacchaeus is the last person we would expect Jesus to favor, the last person we would expect Jesus to call to faithfulness. But Zacchaeus is transformed by his encounter with divine love in the flesh, making restitution for the wrong that he has done and sharing his abundance with people in need. Today, salvation has come to this house. His story of faith stems from a single moment of salvation in Jesus' presence. A moment in which his tomb is opened and he learns the meaning of abundant life. Dear church, God is also in the business of rewriting our stories for the sake of new life and calling us to the work of salvation on behalf of others. So what is your story of faith? As we prepare to make pledges of financial support to Peace in December, I invite you to consider the ways God has encountered you in and through this congregation. How have you encountered divine love in the flesh? How have you come to trust the good news of God's reign in our midst? How have you been transformed for the sake of new life? On the back page of your bulletin, you'll find a form with a few guidelines to help you tell your story. Yes, you. There are a few extra pens and pencils in the pews. So for these last few minutes, I invite you to quietly jot down some thoughts. Then, would you consider writing down your story of faith, either to keep for yourself or to offer as a gift to the rest of the congregation? Those of you who are bold enough to share your stories of faith will enlighten and encourage us as we enter another new year together, trusting that Christ will continue to invite himself into this house to seek and to save us. Go ahead.